Yeah, I think for the audience, I think it's important to think through like, how do you want speaking to kind of fit into what it is that you're doing as a marketer, as a business owner, as a founder, whatever your role may be, because it's going to look different for everybody. So part of one of the nice things about speaking is that it's not necessarily a one size fits all, meaning there are speakers who speak 100, 150, 200 times a year. And it's like a core part of their world, or maybe the only thing that they're doing in terms of their business. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have speakers who maybe they're running an agency, or maybe they're running their business, or they have a full-time job, or whatever it may be, and they still are passionate about speaking, they're interested in speaking, and they speak 5 or 10 times a year. And it kind of speaking kind of feeds into some of the other parts of their business or their world. And it's not that one's better or worse than the other, but for you just got to get really, really clear on, what are my goals with speaking? How do I want speaking to fit into what it is that I'm doing, what it is that I'm trying to accomplish? So that's super important to identify for any speakers, just to figure out like how speaking fits into the mix of what it is that you're trying to do. The other thing I would say is that regardless of your professional accomplishments or achievements, or how long maybe you've done a little bit of speaking before, like speaking is no different than any other skill, in that it takes time, it takes work, it takes effort to get better at it. And so sometimes people may assume like, hey, I'm a charismatic person, or I'm good in conversation, and I've given a talk or two before, and therefore either I should naturally be really, really good on stage, or that I should be able to charge a bunch of money for this right out of the gate. And yeah, you can absolutely make a great living from speaking, but if you want to get better as a speaker, you got to speak, you got to put in reps. And if you want to get better as a podcaster, you got to podcast. You want to get better as a writer, you have to write. If you want to get better playing an instrument or a sport or whatever it may be, you have to do the craft, you have to do the thing. And so I think having a long-term perspective on speaking is super important, versus just saying like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in speaking, and I'll kind of dabble in it and stick my toe in it, and hopefully it all just magically works out.
Yeah, I've found with the more I speak, the better I get in terms of you laying those foundations every time. And it's interesting how when you present, you pick things up that you could do better the next time. As soon as you finish the presentation, you sort of feel
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, there's something there I could improve, or I could have done that better, and next time I'll do that. So what are some things that
Yeah,
you
well,
look
well
at?
to piggyback on that, like one thing that's really enjoyable about speaking, I think, is that you get real time feedback, and it's different
Mm,
than any other medium. Meaning, like if right now we're recording a podcast, and someone's listening to this, and let's say there's a billion people that are listening to this, because there's a massive show, and I know a large percentage of the global population listens to the show. So if people are listening to this right now, like Chris, you and I can't see any of their faces. We have no idea, like, what are they doing right now? Are they smiling? Are they nodding? Are they shaking their head? Are they taking notes? Are they paying attention? Are they driving? Are they cooking? Are they walking? Are they at the gym? Like, we have no idea. And the same thing is true. Like if someone is, if you like when if someone reads my book, The Successful Speaker, like, I don't know. Like, are they underlining things? Are they reading any of it? Are they skipping around? You just don't know. But when you are speaking, when you're standing on a stage giving a presentation, you get that real time feedback that informs the presentation and helps actually make future presentations better, because you see like what is working and what doesn't work. Are people smiling? Are they nodding? Are they paying attention? Are they looking at their phone? Are they writing things down? Are they engaged, or are they disconnected? And so you figure out how to you figure out that feedback from the audience that again makes each presentation and each talk better. And so there's kind of an expression in the speaking industry that when you are when you are quoting a high fee as a speaker, you're not charging for that one speech necessarily. You're charging for the hundreds and hundreds of speeches previously that all went into refining and dialing in. And so that by this time I show up and speak at your event for your audience for this particular client, like it is a really, really, really well refined speech and presentation because of all those previous audiences. So that's one of the fun things about this medium of speaking.
yeah, that's really interesting. So the feedback you get from the audience, how do you? Because I sometimes find when I'm presenting, sometimes I think, and it's maybe not a great trait, but sometimes I forget to always take in everything that's going on. So is that something that you train into your speakers, to actually be more aware of what's going on in the room and kind of gathering that feedback as you go? Is it something that inherently you do, or is it something you have to be sort of trained into, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things. Like, I think initially when people are speaking, it can be very intimidating. It can be very daunting. You know, you're standing up on a stage, typically in front of an audience, and everybody, all eyes are on you. And so people are worried about, like, what if I forget what I'm going to say? Or what if I lose my train of thought? Or what if I, forget a story that I was going to tell? Or I have my 3 points, but I tell them out of order, like whatever, the thing may be. And so it can feel very daunting, right? But again, like we talked about earlier, the more you speak, the more comfortable, the more confident that you become. And one thing that we remind speakers all the time is that you shouldn't be, again, assuming that you are speaking to different audiences each time, which is the case with most speakers, versus speaking to the same audience every time you speak. You don't necessarily want to be giving a completely new, different talk every single time you speak. Like you want to, again, like we touched on, whenever you speak, you want to take that feedback that you get from the audience and refine and develop. It's kind of like imagine a chef making a new dish. They're not just going to nail it the first try. They're going to make a really good, educated guess of, I think this will work. I think this will make sense. I think this is funny. Or for a chef, I think this will, I think I'm putting the right amount of sugar or salt, or cooking it or baking it too long or too short or whatever. And then when you taste it, you're taste testing and to determine, like, what do I need to tweak? What do I need to modify? What do I need to change? And like, oh, okay, now let's cook it a little bit less, or we need to cook it a little bit more, or it has too much salt, or we need to add a little bit more of this, vegetable or whatever it may be. They're, again, making that educated guess, but then kind of refining it over time there with with each time that they make that dish. And so eventually, like, the dish is just, it's perfect. It's flawless. Like, that's the way it, they should deliver it each time. And so for a speaker, like, yes, some of it is like you're in real time kind of noticing the audience and noticing, like, are people engaged? Are they paying attention? Like, what's happening with the audience? Another good thing that I think all speakers should do is to record themselves, record the video, watch the video back. A good exercise is to watch the video on mute and see what you're doing with your nonverbal communication. So you may not even be aware of, you watch it on mute. And sometimes you can even do this. If you watch it on mute and at, 2 or 3x speed, you'll notice, like, sometimes speakers do like the same gestures with their hands just over and over and over. And you pick up on that when you're watching it muted and sped up. Or you may see a speaker that just paces back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you notice that whenever, again, it's muted and you're just watching the video sped up. And so you pick up on some of these things are like, oh, dang, I didn't even realize I did that. Or some maybe go-to phrase that you say all the time. Like, a lot of times speakers will end a sentence with, like they'll be talking about something or explaining some point of, and it's almost like I'm trying to get this the audience to agree with me, or just to kind of confirm that the audience is with me. You know what I'm talking about, right? And that sort of thing, where you may not realize it in your speaking, but then you watch it back and you realize, dang, I actually say that a lot, and I need to be more aware of that. So I think, like, those type of things are the things that you're looking for whenever you're watching, quote unquote, that game film and looking back at it to see, what are the areas that you can improve upon.